you. Welcome, everyone. We're here for the Big City Book Club at the New York City Transit Museum, and we're honored to have our guest author tonight, David Duchovny, who's written this wonderful book called The Subways that everybody ought to go out and get if you haven't already. And we are coming to you live from a 1930 subway car where we are losing signals right and left and can't use our cell phones, so we're just going to talk to you.
We're broadcasting back to the 1930s.
You're right. Right, exactly. It's that technology level we're working with. So, David, you grew up in New York.
Yeah.
You rode all kinds of old school subways.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of your favorite features.
Well, I'm beginning to feel the heat from this.
Right, it's a
it does have the fans, though. I don't remember those fans. Do you?
I don't remember the fans. I just remember thinking I'm never going to, survive this stop, this ride that's 3 stops because it's 400 degrees.
Yeah. There's a part of the book where one of the characters is telling the other about a subway ride that he took with his mother when he was a kid, and that's lifted from my own life because my mother's from Scotland. She's an actual immigrant, and she did not know the subway system so well and never really got to know it very well and was never comfortable with it.
So how did she get around?
Well, she got around that way because, to take a taxi back then, to waste that kind of money was just not going to happen.
Right.
And so I, as a young boy, I was obsessed with dinosaurs like a lot of young boys are.
Yes, sure.
Even before Jurassic Park, it was happening. And I always wanted to go to the Museum of Natural History, and we probably went, a handful of times when I was a kid from 11th Street to 86th and Central Park West. But, 1 out of 5 times we would end up in another borough.
Because your mom would just...
Yeah, because we would just take some kind of wrong train that would take us to Jamaica, Queens, which is, I think, the end, the key with the R, I don't know what that was. Right, which is where, and that actually happened where as a young boy, maybe 7 or 8, the doors opened, and this is after having gone up. I'd never been on a subway that actually went above ground. That was terrifying to me. It's like all of a sudden you're riding on the subway. I've only been ever underground on the subway, and then all of a sudden we're up above ground. It's like we are on the wrong train.
And did you ever? My fear was always, my parents were going to slowly get out. I was going to be stuck on the platform by myself. The doors were going to close.
Right.
And that's happened to friends of mine. Does that ever happen to you?
No, I think I would fantasize about actually like leaving them. As the doors were closing, I would bolt out and start a new life.
So the book is called Miss Subways, and it's inspired by actual real life, some posters of competition, beauty pageant, personality pageant of women. Lives of ordinary women were featured in posters on the subway cars back in the day. Yeah. And again, I didn't think that I thought that it was so long ago that you would be too young to remember.
I went to high school from 74 to 78, which is when I would have been my peak subway riding years. Mm-hmm. And I certainly remember seeing posters for the Miss Subways competition. And it did feel, even then, like something from another time. But I don't know the exact dates when it ran, but I know it was kind
of... something that started in the 40s or 50s or even earlier.
Yeah, it's old. And I think in 2004 maybe they brought it back.
They brought it back. Right.
I think it ended the first time around probably in the mid 80s. Right. And then they brought it back kind of nostalgically. Right. And then it didn't catch on again.
It didn't catch on, and as we were saying earlier, it certainly wouldn't fly today because it was profiling young,
some of the old copy is fantastic. That I use in the book.
Yes.
Knits, Argyle socks, expert.
Right.
That's the real selling point.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. That's the first winner.
Really?
Mona Freeman. Yeah.
What did you learn about Mona Freeman?
She went on to Hollywood and had some success as an actress, and lived a long life.
Good.
But is no longer with us. And I was going through my Miss Subways book when I was researching. There's a big kind of coffee table book on it, and it was just something about her. I didn't know she was the first one when I used her, but there was just something about her picture, and.
You were drawn to the picture even before you knew.
Yeah, just her face, something about it.
Yeah.
She seemed of another time to me.
And she has that sweet "I'm ready for New York" gumption look, you know.
Exactly.
We've got lots of interesting questions from our viewers and readers, so I'm going to pose a couple to David. We've got one from Lisa, and she says, David, did the film Cocoon inspire the Central Park Fountain of Youth scene? Do you ever want to be magically younger?
Thank you for using the word inspire, as opposed, did you steal that same from Cocoon? Yeah, for sure I did. I was inspired by the Cocoon scene. Yes, of course I wish I was magically younger. Daily, probably. Hourly.
With each creek. Okay, you've written 3 novels, and some viewers out there might not know that. What was the most enjoyable, fulfilling to write, which was the easiest to write? Now,
right.
Non-writers, I mean, I'll tell the non-writers, the writing's never easy.
No. Well, I was saying that this was the hardest one, and the reason, aside from gathering mythologies from around the world that I thought were germane for the actual book, so I just went through a lot of different like folk tales and things like that, and tried to use whatever might work, without going too deeply into,
right.
or even highlighting any one mythology more than another. Just whatever worked for me, I kind of cherry picked, and that took a while. But the source material for for Emer, for the main character in the book, is an Irish mythology about Cuchulainn, an Irish king, and his wife is Emer. And as a king then, he had a bunch of concubines and a bunch of lovers, and it didn't disqualify him as a moral human being. But to kind of make him a present-day American and to have him behave the same way was problematic.
Right. There did be some whitewashing there.
Well, not only whitewashing, but it's like I wanted him to be sympathetic.
Right.
And that would disqualify him.
Right.
To a modern reader.
Absolutely.
So I had to figure out a way to make him unfaithful in spirit, in a way, more than in deed.
Which you do.
Yeah.
I won't give it away.
But that was, to me, that was the hardest part, because at first it was almost like a mirror of what was going on there.
Right.
And then I realized, well, there's just no way that anybody's going to root for this guy, or they're not going to like her for wanting to be with him.
They'll think she's weak and compromised.
Right.
And so you were a graduate student in English for a while before you were an actor, right? Were you drawn to mythology then? Has this been a lifelong area?
Well, I think I've just been drawn to mythology in the sense that I guess books are myths, and for me, like even when we would study Freud in school, back when you did study Freud, I was taught that Freud was a literary critic, basically.
Right.
So his psychology, or the basis for what we think of as the science of the mind, is taken from books and from myths. I mean, the Oedipal complex, Electra complex, all those stories. The greatest wisdom of humans is told in the form of myths and religious schemes, and to me that's what I learned by reading. So if you talk about Greek myths, you're really talking about psyche. It's not, I mean, unfortunately we live in a world where we see them as movies, and we think they actually are out there, but it's actually, these are screenplays of the mind, really.
And what, I'm going to borrow a question from some of my colleagues at the book review who always ask authors, what's your reading life like now? Do you read contemporary fiction? Do you read all over the place? What do you like?
I do. I just read all over. I'll take recommendations from people, or I'll read the Times book review. I get a lot of my reading from the Times, which is why I'll get pissed off when I don't get reviewed there, because they're like, oh, who's going to find me? So there's that. But I'm about to start writing, and when I write and when I'm researching, I don't really read fiction. I'll read nonfiction, but if I read fiction, I get scared that I'll just regurgitate what I'm reading, or copy a style, or
shut down, maybe sometimes.
Exactly, like if somebody's too good.
Right, then you just
forget it.
Forget it. Start watching Netflix and
give
it all up.
Better to just watch TV and go, I can write better than that.
Okay, let's see what else we have from our viewers. How do you think being an actor and immersed in storytelling for so long informed your style as a writer? It's a great question.
It is a good question. Coming out of graduate school, and as you probably know in your line of work, I think we get into what we do as people, which is lives of books, or whatever. We get into it because we like to read, and then it becomes our job. You know, and the job of a graduate student is criticizing books.
Right.
Your job is criticizing books. So when you get a book, I'm going to speak for you. It might be hard sometimes to just enjoy it because you know, oh, I've got to write a review of this. I've got to be thinking of things. And I'm not just enjoying and feeling and reading and going on for the ride. I've got a deadline.
Right.
And as a graduate student, that was a little bit me because I would read. I have a paper to write, or I have to get an angle, or I've got, you know, I need to produce something off of this text. And what was the question? Why am I talking about this?
It's great.
What was the question? Because I do have more of an answer.
Okay. How do you think being an actor and immersive storytelling
Okay, good. So that took me away from the very enjoyable human mechanics of reading, which is like a story.
Right.
Because that's not what you deal with in graduate school.
Right. It's constant analysis.
It's analysis. It's linguistic analysis. It's symbolic. You know, it's like surgery as opposed to some kind of holistic thing. So when I became an actor, you know, most TV and film are really story oriented.
Right.
You know, and I started to get back into just the mechanics of plot. You know.
And you've written some screenplays as well, right?
And the enjoyment of the mechanics of plot as opposed to just a linguistic enjoyment or a philosophical enjoyment. So it was really, I think I think I needed to go through that, you know, in order to become a writer eventually, was to rediscover just the enjoyment of a good plot. Yeah. You know, like a 19th century novel. Not a 20th century novel.
Right, just reading it on the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
No 3,000 words to go.
Exactly.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us. It's been a great conversation.